Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth-running organization. But there always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here's your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found the information on our last episode, how to sell high-end services without manipulation, aggressive tactics, or feeling salesy, informative. If you are unable to join us and would like to listen to the show, links can be found on our YouTube and Facebook pages, as well as multiple favorite podcast platforms. And if there are topics you'd find beneficial or questions you have, please feel free to reach out to me at media@abandp.com. Now let's learn a little bit about our guest today. Born and raised in Enid, Oklahoma, Caleb brings a personalized approach to each and every client of his. With a degree from the University of Central Oklahoma in marketing and an MBA from West Texas A&M University, he finds innovative ways to reach new target customers and expand your business no matter where you start. Combining strategy with implementation, he focuses on building long-term customers through data-driven decision-making. With experience working with both small and large companies, he has the experience to help businesses create strategic marketing plans that focus specifically on each business's strengths, not just a one-size-fits-all template-based strategy. So, Caleb, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm glad to have you here. I'm looking forward to this topic. But before I get into any questions that I have for you, I would love for you just to tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got into marketing.
Yeah, so I don't know how I got into marketing and why I got into marketing, but here I am. Just kidding. So I started when I went to college and decided that I wanted to pursue a degree in marketing because, you know, who else doesn't want to go into marketing? It's always the last option, I think, for most people. So decided I really liked the creative side of marketing, but also the business elements of it. I liked math, but I was never good at finance. So I figured I probably couldn't be an accountant. And most of the other business professions, I was like, man, that sounds kind of boring. So I started getting my degree and working for a business, and all that led to getting to work with the second largest privately held QSR brand, Inspire Brands, who owns Sonic, Jimmy John's, Buffalo Wild Wings, and a couple other brands, and had some really neat experiences on where I was able to learn a lot about consumer and product insights and what data actually goes into decision making on large companies, which then led to deciding I really hate corporate life, but it's a really great opportunity to learn a lot. And so while I worked with them, I became a marketing consultant on the side and grew that business to where it was a lot more sustainable and actually paid our bills. And so I go to my wife one day and I say, hey, we've made some money. This looks great. How do you feel about me becoming a full-time business owner? And she thankfully said yes. And now I'm a full-time marketing consultant with my own firm, and we're growing a team and everything. So kind of a slow story, but nothing too crazy, nothing too fun, but got some great experiences. And now I get to help a lot of cool business owners actually understand how to use marketing. So it's kind of a fun little journey.
Right. And your experience is going to be able to help them because you've been there, right? So you understand what it takes.
Yep, that's where we kind of encapsulate, you know, you have your McKinsey, your Deloitte, your BSG, the top 4 consulting firms that small businesses don't have access to.
Right.
You know, they're not paying $5 million for a certain PowerPoint. And not that we can provide that level of service, but our goal is to provide that level of service with more of a small business focus because they don't have $5 million to spend on a PowerPoint, and some large companies do.
Right, exactly. So, well, let me start with the questions that I do have prepped for you today. So the first one is, how can business owners identify if a marketer is a good fit for their business?
Oh, this is a good question. There's a lot of this out there. So what we always tell our clients, specifically in our brand, we've seen that most of our clients come to us after 3 to 5 bad experiences with marketers. And usually that's within a 2-year period. And so they can go, typically they're going through 2 marketers within each year. which is a lot.
Mhm.
Marketing is one of those machines that you have to get going, and it takes a while, and it's a, no matter what you're paying, there's still a price to inefficient marketing. And so one of the first things that we tell people to look at is look at their resume and their experience and actually really interview them to understand
Mhm.
where is their experience, are what they saying actually lining up. There's a lot of offers out there that are hidden behind legal language that it's a guarantee that you get your money back, but you don't realize that you have to make 3,000 phone calls to one person for that to
Mm.
qualify within the guarantee. And so there's a lot of manipulation that's used within the marketing side. And so what we tell people is interview every firm and get several quotes if
Mhm.
possible, unless you really feel good about that person. And when you get close to feeling good about that person, make sure they actually fit your values and your vision and that you mesh well,
Right.
because you're going to be spending a lot of time talking to this person or that firm. And so make sure it's someone that you actually enjoy talking with and make sure that they seem to have that expertise. So one of our first recommendations is just dive further than more than just a Google search and what the first thing on their website says. I can put anything on my website that says I made $1 million last year, but you actually don't know if I made $1 million last year.
Right. Right.
So one of the big things is look at the resume, look at what their experience is, and if they can share some sort of social proof or here's some things that we've done for clients, here's some of our work, that always adds a lot of validity because you can see the style and how they do things and what type of content they create. So that's kind of our biggest and best recommendation that we can provide to people. One of the other big ones that we recommend to people, you might agree with this, who knows, but we tell people if the offer sounds too good to be true, it typically is.
Oh yeah.
Not that can be a one size fits all. Sometimes you do get good opportunities or people looking to build their portfolio that you can get kind of a good deal. But most of the times, if I come to you and I say, hey, I have an investment opportunity and you can spend $20 and make $1 million, you're probably going to look at me and say, I'm going to stay as far away as possible from you. And so it's the same thing with marketing. If we tell people marketing is consumer behavior. And so we're trying to predict and find ways that we can engage with your customers better. But if they have a headache that day, if their kids are yelling at them, if they've had a really stressful day, and we deliver the perfect ad at what we think is the perfect time, and that consumer is not in the right frame of mind, they will not purchase. And so we've done everything we can, but they're just not in the right space. And
Right.
so how do you feel? Have you had other tips or any other ways that you've thought of?
Well, it's true. I mean, I remember there was a picture I saw once that I thought explains this really well for a lot of industries. And it showed someone getting a tattoo, and he was holding a picture of what he saw, as this image that he wanted. And then the person doing the tattoo, it looked very childish, and I used that once even to talk about you shouldn't just be focusing just on the price all the time, right? It's really what you're getting for what you're paying, and is it of value, right? So something might be more expensive in the long run, but you're getting a better service or a better product than if you're paying the lower price.
Absolutely. And while I made the joke that someone can't pay $4 million for a PowerPoint, most small businesses, sometimes it works well and sometimes it doesn't. And so sometimes the money you invest, you obviously never want to stretch yourself too thin, but sometimes that push can lead you to, we're investing a little bit more into a bigger team and they have a lot more
Mhm.
capabilities and they can do X. We can
Right.
afford this. It's a little bit of a stretch versus, okay, well, this guy is like 10 times cheaper. I'm going to do this because it fits my budget. And then you realize 6 months later, they haven't done anything that we need. They don't have the limitations. They're barely paying for their software. They can't invest the time and resources into us. And so I think that's a great
Right.
concept.
Mhm. So do you think it's important for somebody to find a marketer that is familiar and has done a lot with their industry, or does the industry not matter as much as determining just where the marketing needs to happen and finding that client?
I think it really depends on the industry. Obviously, I do believe there is some weight added to industry like knowledge, and
Mhm.
let's say we deal a lot in the real estate sector, and knowing the different terms like IDX websites and property search and knowing the dominant things like Zillow. You have some, a large player like Zillow in the industry, and we're not going to take over market share on property searches. So we have to do some sort of engagement or find creative ways. So while I do think there is something to be said about industry experience, I don't think we should put as much weight on industry experience. I think there's a lot to be said about it, but I think sometimes when you have an outsider, it's like most businesses, when you have an outsider with experience of other industries and they come in and they're willing to learn or willing to invest the
Mhm.
time into researching, I think sometimes you can get some really creative out of the box thinking versus just the standard, here's what we've done for other clients, it's worked. Because sometimes it works and sometimes what you've done for 10 other clients doesn't work for a certain client. So while I think there is some industry level knowledge that is needed, I don't think it's it brings a lot to the table.
So then what should a business owner be doing to build a better marketing plan?
Oh, that's a good question. Put me on the spot here. So we believe that there are a lot of variables at play that we recommend looking into because like you mentioned in our bio, while template-based strategies work really well, they kind of give you a good starting point, but it's not as customized. And so what we recommend looking at telling people is when you sit down and do a marketing plan, don't just go off of what someone's told you. Okay, we need to do Facebook ads. We need to do Google ads. Look at exactly what you're doing now, what you've done in the past, and how you can grow from that. So if you've launched Google ads and they've worked, but they've stopped working, maybe look at adjusting, or okay, maybe we're going to do more keyword intent based searches now. And then the next 6 months, we're going to generate enough revenue that we can do some exposure ads on, let's say, Nextdoor or Facebook, where we can do more blog posts and become the subject matter expert. So it's no longer the focus on how many leads can we get, it's how dominant can we be in the marketplace right now for exposure, and how can we be talked about, and how can people continue to see us, no matter if it's a direct result. But again, there's that budget that comes into play. Do you have the money that you can spend on direct exposure, not worry about getting the business directly from that and still survive? And so I think it's really crucial that as you continue to build out marketing plans, you evaluate your budget, you set a number in mind that you can spend per month that is not going to break the bank, but it's going to encourage you to grow. And then also look at what are you doing now? What have you done in the past that has worked and that has not worked? And then predict the future. What things can we do that will lead us to that growth pattern that we might not think about, or that we might not think works, and test it out and see what works.
So is there something that a business owner should be doing in terms of the actual strategy, right? So you're talking about looking at different tactics per se, but is there a difference between looking at the tactics and actually creating a strategy?
I think so. And I think a lot of it requires, and this is why a lot of people hire us, it requires a lot of self-evaluation. Because that it's fun and great to talk about the cool things such as Facebook or Google ads or TV ads or big exposure. But then what you have to look at is, obviously there's the differentiating point between sales and marketing. So everyone likes to think sales is marketing and marketing is sales, but what you don't realize is they're all different. And so they all stem into marketing though, because client retention is customer service, but it's also marketing. And so what we recommend is look at a holistic approach of your business and look at how you can integrate marketing within each approach. And so if that looks like a customer acquisition strategy, what are we doing to acquire new customers? And that can be more of the advertising piece. But then on the actual holistic approach from the customer retention standpoint, that still falls within marketing. So how are we doing retaining customers to reduce our long-term lifetime value of our client? And so there's a lot of strategies at play, and it requires you to look at what am I doing successfully in my business and what am I not doing successfully, and where do I know those pain points? Because I think as a business owner, we all know in our heart, whether we want to accept it or not, where our pain points are. But it's identifying those pain points, predicting the future pain points of as we grow, where those look like, and then looking how you can integrate marketing and then building the plan, not just sitting down and saying, okay, we want to grow by 10 customers. Let's just do ads. You have to look at, we want to grow at 10 customers a month. What does that do to staffing? What's the constraints on, staffing wise? How do we plan that out in the future? What does it look like from a retention standpoint? How are we touching these people? When they come in, are we actually able to keep them for more than a month? Little pieces of that we can integrate within marketing that we recommend looking at. So there is a lot of planning before you actually create the strategy or the plan.
I think that's a good point to think about as well, because a lot of people are only thinking like, I want to grow, I want to bring in, more customers, but they don't think about all the things they need to support that growth. So I think having that whole conversation with your client and saying, okay, like if you do meet your goal and you're bringing in 10 people per month, what else do you need to be successful in, helping them?
Yep. Well, I'm sure you have experience with this. Growth is really scary and you can't predict what growth looks like. And so sometimes you can have your hardest situations when you grow quite aggressively. We had a situation last year when we've continued to basically double our growth year over year, kind of been our goal. And so what we didn't predict was that was sustainable for a couple of years. Well, then as we continue to grow and get more clients, we realized we were growing at a faster pace than we were actually growing internally. And so we were growing demand, making more money, but at the same time, we were pushing our people, pushing our staff, pushing our software to a level that we should not have done and was not sustainable. And so we had to pull back and look at and reevaluate our systems and processes on this worked for a while, but now that we've scaled and grown, we have to build new systems and models that fit this growth. And so it's these things that we don't think about when we're growing. It sounds fun, it sounds cool, it sounds like a lot more money, but then we don't realize if we onboard 10 more clients, we might need to hire a full-time salaried person to handle that. So now we might have grown a little bit in revenue, but we're actually losing money for that, those 10 people because we had to replace a new income.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great point too. I actually had a client come to me once who said, we've been growing, we were a $3 million company. This year we're going to be 6 and we're projecting by next year we're going to be 10, but why don't we have money in the bank? And I actually sat down and reviewed all their numbers and found their most profitable period was when they were a $3 million company, because as they were growing so much, their labor cost just was skyrocketing. And that's why I was like, do you know that, yes, you're looking at the top line number and you're super excited about that, but you need to look at your net profit and it's going down every year. So I think that's eye-opening for people is they're only focused on the growth in the top line number. How much am I going to bring in? And they don't realize the impact of everything they're going to need. And that is going to hit their bottom line, really.
Yeah. And I think it's something that's not talked about a lot. So it's refreshing when you have those conversations because it's like as exciting and as fun as growth is, sometimes it's really messy. And having that perception of not everything's going to go well. And as we grow, it's going to be more expensive and there's a lot more pressure. Those are the things that we're not talking about in marketing. And so we make it look really cool as marketers saying, we're going to grow your business. We're going to get you these leads you're going to continue to profit from like a lead to value ratio. But in the long run, our marketers actually looking at how much demand a client can handle and how that fits within what they're looking for. So I think it's a really interesting concept that not a lot of people are talking about right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just love that you really look at everything as a whole with your customers so they can really plan, and be prepared for that. But I would love to also ask you the question, we've been told, be on social media and things too, so you could be seen. And that's going to take a while for people to find you and engage with you and build that reputation so they trust you. So should you be looking at this as like just a long-term plan as well? Or are there things you could be doing in the short run that also just get you seen and help you grow, more quickly if that's your plan? Like what really should you be focused on? And should it be more short-term, long-term? How do you really help someone with that?
So we believe in looking at marketing from 2 different perspectives. You have your short term and your long term, which is exactly what you just talked about. So we look at identifying what things can we currently do that's going to at least help you grow your business long term, but doing it in the short term. So maybe that looks like social media postings. Maybe that looks like more lead generation ads just to continue to drive business and that incremental volume to support your long term vision. But at the same time, you kind of have to balance the two, because if you're too short focused, you're going to hold things to a standard that you probably shouldn't hold them to. And so this advertising within a month is not working. Instead of waiting 3 months and looking at how well it performs, we look at the short term. Oh, it's not working well. And then what they don't realize is maybe month 3 is when it really kicks off. And so sometimes you need that patience, but sometimes you really have to hold your goals and your thoughts accountable, because sometimes things don't work. And so if you look at it from a short-term focus, what are we doing now to grow the business like in the short term for the long term? But what are we doing right now? And then how do we plan what that goes into? What can we do in the future from the short-term planning that, leads us into a much better marketing position? And so, that might look like right now you start with social media posting, but in the long term, you want to do a perfect example. I want to do a podcast one day, but I know that I'm already stretched too thin on everything, that I want to do it really well. And so I don't want to just start something new and say, it'd be great we get some exposure, because if I start one and then end it in the next, let's say 6 months, it was a failed venture, great learning lesson, I'm sure, but I've spent 6 months of my time focusing on that versus when we could be continuing to grow our client experience systems. And so it's kind of that balance between what are we doing now and what are we doing in the future or preparing for in the future.
Right. Well, and it's true what you mentioned about making sure that whatever you're going to do, you're going to be able to be consistent, right? So if you're going to be writing an article, decide, are you going to do it every week, every couple weeks, once a month, whatever, but at least consistently do it based on the date that you say you're going to, right? Because if you start out doing something once a week for maybe a month and then you get busy and then you don't, then people are going to say like, oh, they weren't really that serious.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things you just have to learn. And I it's like with all marketing, it's all testing. Like I mentioned before, we're just trying to predict consumer behavior. And sometimes we're really good at it. And sometimes we don't hit the nail on the head. And we have to adjust and look at the data. What is the data telling us? And I think a lot of people are very narrow-minded and short-term looking instead of what is this doing for the business growth?
Mm-hmm. And you just mentioned the word test, which popped something back in my mind that I remember too. And I know I've heard about A/B testing, right? So if you're going to put something on social media or do an email or different things that you have, one thing that you slightly change and then you see what does better. So how would you coach the business owner who maybe is doing this themselves, like how to even do that testing and what should they be changing, or how quickly should they send out one versus the other, just all of that around the testing to see what's really hitting?
Yeah, so we always recommend A/B testing. We have a different methodology than some do. So we believe in kind of going full force into one campaign, allocating half of the time towards a certain campaign with, let's say, long form content. So you're going to do more of a paragraph style content with an ad, or paragraph style with an email newsletter, whatever that looks like. And then for that other period, the other half, we're going to do short form content that maybe focuses more on pain points or gets to the point. And so what we'll do is we'll allocate the full dollars towards that campaign, half and half or quarter and 4 quarters, and look exactly how well did it perform on a broad scale. Because most of the time when we're dealing with small business budgets, it's not worth A/B testing because you don't get a lot of the data at the same time. So, it's like, we can spend, let's say, $500 a month on marketing, on ads. Instead of spending $250 on 2 different ad campaigns, and you might say that's enough to test, but we don't believe it is, versus let's spend $500 the first month, $500 the next month, look at which one performed better, and then go from there on the third month of what we want to actually position. Because the one thing I think a lot of people from our perspective don't do as well is they think that if they spend $500 a month, that's a lot of money to spend on testing in the broad sense. And again, we're speaking apples and oranges compared to corporations versus small businesses. But these large corporations are investing a lot of money into how salty their hamburgers are, or how well the lettuce meshes with the tomatoes, with the cheese, and what type of cheese. So again, you can't compare the two, but I think there's a lot to be said about going full force into one, testing that, and then pulling back if it doesn't work, or saying, let's adapt, let's look at short form content. Okay, this one performed better, let's move into that. And so one of the things that we always say is give a 3-month testing window for anything that you do. So any ads that you run, any sort of content that you want to try out, TikTok, if you want to try to start a podcast, give it a solid 3-month go and look exactly what the data is saying, and be willing to endure or be willing to cut off at any point after that 3-month period. And so we always say, within newsletters that you're doing, within ads, within social posts, give it enough time that it can learn, but also don't waste your time and money on things that don't work. And so maybe that's too broad of an answer, but we always recommend our clients be willing to invest in testing, be willing to give it a 3-month time, and again, be willing to either cut it off or continue going, and be willing to have that conversation with yourself of, this is working, we're going to invest more into this, we're going to leverage into this because it is working, or we're going to immediately cut it off because we've spent 3 months and we've got nothing, and we don't see from the data that we're seeing, we're not seeing any incremental lift from an exposure standpoint. We're not reaching the amount of people. We have a high cost per 1,000 impressions, whatever that looks like. That's kind of what we recommend.
Mm-hmm. So I've also heard that if you want to, do an ad, or maybe it's like boosting a post or something, that you could also fine tune the market that you want that to be delivered to. And I looked once, it was just, let me just see about this post. And I went into Facebook, and for some of the things that I wanted to target, I was having a hard time finding it. So I don't know, can you talk about maybe how you can actually determine demographics or characteristics or things that maybe will help you get your ad in front of who you want, but it doesn't just go to everyone and you've spent your money on, potential sites on your thing that just don't apply to you.
Yeah. So as a lot of advertisers know too, the targeting is getting a little bit worse on Facebook because of all the limitations on privacy, which is always a good and bad thing. So while we love privacy, it makes our job a little bit harder. So what we like to tell people is look at from a broad sense of who you want to reach. And so get very specific on, everyone talks about who's your target market. And it's like, well, age 18 to 35, and they make a lot of money. And it's like, okay, that's great. But how much are they making to be able to afford this service? Or as a business owner, what's their net revenue that will allow them to spend $10,000 a month on marketing or 5,000? And so really identifying what does that look like? What life stage are they in? Or do they have kids? Do they not have kids? Do they like shopping online? Like the little nitty gritty details that you can get a little bit more creative on and identify, okay, my target customer is 18 to 25. They love shopping. They love going out to eat. They have maybe a 2-year-old in their house. One's a stay-at-home mom. The other, there's a full-time worker. And so the things that you can do to build this profile out that, you want to make it very specific and identify, okay, this is the person that I want to reach. And then if it doesn't work, you reevaluate. Okay, from my perspective, this did not work. Let's talk to some of my customers or look at who are my customers and do they fit within that criteria or not. So maybe you have 35-year-olds that are both dual income earners, no kids in the household, and maybe they hate online shopping. And so you start to realize through the data that you're getting from clients of, oh, wow, we missed the mark on this, or we hit the nail on the head. And so within Facebook, one of the things that you can do is there's a difference between boosting a post and going into the ads manager. And so Facebook has made it very aware of there's a blue boost button. And a lot of people only think that that's advertising. But from our research that we've seen on Facebook, you're actually limited by 50% of the people if you select the blue boost button. And so you only reach 50% of the people that you could actually reach by hitting the blue boost button. And there's actually research out there that shows it, which is really fascinating. So what you can do is you can go into what's called Facebook Ads Manager, set up an ads account. There's a lot of different features within it, but you can specifically target online shoppers or people with kids or a certain age demographic or in a certain region. And so what we say is, we don't want the broad, I want everyone, or I want anyone above 100. Like put a number to it. I want someone that makes $100,000 to $200,000 because maybe our service is too low for someone that makes $350,000. Maybe our quality is not at the level that they want, and so we shouldn't give ourselves these ideas in the very beginning that we're going to get those people. Maybe we grow into that, and maybe that we build our service level into that. But we know right now that we're grounded, that we want people between $100,000 and $200,000 that are between the ages of 25 and 30, let's say. And then as we continue to build our staff, we can support an infrastructure move to where we're actually targeting 35-year-olds that make $350,000 a year. So does that kind of help?
Yeah, maybe my issue was I was going to hit boost instead of ad, but what I had wanted to do was there was a very specific thing in California that employers had to know about. That they had to register by June 30th of 2022. So I wanted to put out like some information here. I have this resource. So I wanted to target California employers that, had staff and that type of thing. And I couldn't figure it out. So I was like, I'm not going to take the time, to do this. But I think that was just maybe my issues. Maybe I thought I was in the ad thing and maybe I was only in the boost and maybe I didn't have all the options available to like really play with who I wanted. So my demographics are not as much by age or things like that. It was really, I need the entrepreneur who's in California, Yep.
Well, and sometimes it can be a shift of channel too. So, let's say you're looking for employers in California. Facebook might not be the best marketplace for that because a lot of people on Facebook don't want to talk business. They want to, they want to engage personally. And so one of the things that we've seen is you go on LinkedIn, you run a LinkedIn ad, it's the same platform, you can do the same, but there's a lot of different targeting. So you can actually target entrepreneurs. So sometimes all it takes is kind of a channel shift and saying, okay, we're looking at B2B, we're not going to hit Facebook or Instagram because who's going to want to engage with this from a realistic standpoint?
That's a great point as well. Well, I do know we are running short on time today, so I want to ask if you have an offer that you would like to give to our listeners.
So if you spend $20 with us, we will make you $1 million. Oh wait, sorry, wrong podcast. Just kidding.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding. Please don't take that into consideration. Maybe I might have to talk to my lawyer about that actually. Just kidding. So what we typically do is we offer a free consultation with any business owner or enterprise level organization that is just looking around. It's a no obligation. We don't try to sell on the phone call unless you want us to. But our goal with it is to identify if there's a way that we can help you determine strategy or answer any questions that you have initially. We won't give you all of our secrets, I'll tell you that, but we will work to help you kind of at least give you a good direction of what to do and where you should head. So you can go to our website. It's crocheconsulting.com, CROCHE.com, or not, I said that wrong. CROCHE consulting.com, missed the consulting piece. And they can go on there and schedule a 30-minute consultation. And again, it's no obligation, no pressure. We just like to talk and help you identify what you can do marketing wise.
Perfect. And can they find you also on social media?
They can. I'm mainly on LinkedIn, so you can find me, Caleb Roche. I think I have an MBA after it because I'm one of those cool kids that has the comma MBA. So if you want to find me, it's Caleb Roche, comma MBA. Make sure you don't forget the MBA. And I'm always looking to add new connections to my LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on my show, Caleb. I really appreciate your sharing your expertise.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be on this.
And I do want to thank the listener too. So thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this topic interesting and it answered some questions about marketing for small business owners. If you have any additional questions or comments, be sure to reach out to Caleb or send us a message at media@abandp.com. And would you please share our show information with those you know? I'd greatly appreciate your support. I hope you can join us for our next topic, financial planning for the everyday retiree. And please remember, you can connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And my website is abandp.com. You can find the podcast posted on multiple favorite podcast platforms as well, including iTunes, Google, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Until next time, have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next Tuesday. Have a terrific week.